This is Larry Jordan, the host of the Digital Production Buzz. The following interview is an excerpt from a recent program. To hear the entire program, visit digitalproductionbuzz.com. Dan Montgomery is the president and CEO of Imagine Products, Inc. He and his wife, Jane, founded Imagine Products back in 1991 with the concept of creating software to improve video production. From that initial dream has sprung ShotPut Pro, HD View, Proxy Mill, and PreRoll Post. Hello, Dan. Welcome.
Hi, Larry.
Dan, one of the big conundrums for media folks is trying to figure out how to archive their projects for the long term. How would you define the difference between making backups and making archives?
Well, back in the day, it was all about making copies of your analog tapes, right? And those were backups, right? An archive is really meant as something you're not going to touch very often. So a true archive, you have to have at least 2 copies off-site in different locations that are protected so that they can be accessed in an emergency. Whereas a backup is just simply another copy that you have locally, probably, and you're making multiples of those, perhaps. And I run into people that try to use LTO in a sense. What that is, they have 1 copy, they make 1 tape, and they think they're safe. But that's really not a good workflow. You want to at least have 2, and even if you have it on random access, you still want another emergency copy.
It seems that there's 3 big issues surrounding archiving. First, what hardware should we use? Second, what software should we use? And third, and I think it's the sleeper question, how do we play these files back in the future? So I want to start with the hardware question. What do you recommend, archiving on hard drives or archiving on tape?
Either LTO tape or Sony optical disc, something like that that's more permanent, that has a long shelf life, 20 to 30 years. Hard disks are like car batteries. They're only good for maybe 4 or 5 years.
Do you have a preference between LTO tape and the optical media that Sony's released?
Not really. I think in the long run, the LTO is probably cheaper and more widely adapted. But there's a lot of different companies involved in this, the manufacturing and also hardware that's out there. They'll be able to access it in the future. Whereas Sony is just Sony, but then again, it's Sony, so they're pretty pervasive in our industry.
So it sounds like you're not recommending hard drives for long-term storage.
Absolutely not.
How come?
Just not reliable. They're not going to be there for long term. Plus, the cost per gigabyte is prohibitive in the long run compared to something you can get on a tape drive. You can, nowadays LTO7 is about $150 street value, $140 maybe for 6 terabytes. That's pretty cheap.
Since we can write directly to tape drives with the new LTFS technology, why do we even need archiving software?
Well, because everybody's time is valuable, right? And so we're all in a hurry and we want to get things done quickly and as efficiently as possible. And, for just dropping a couple files onto tape, sure, use Finder, use Explorer, that'll be fine. But if you're talking about lots and lots of videos like most people are doing, you're shooting a whole day's worth. Let's say you've got 6 terabytes a day that you're backing up at night. You want something that's going to do that quickly and efficiently and index it all, and also keep you from making mistakes. A lot of our software like ShotPut and our PreRoll Post backup software is all about catching the simple human errors and keeping you from doing silly things when you're tired, you've been shooting all day, and you're ready to go hit the hay, You want to try and keep people out of trouble.
Well, tell me more about what PreRoll Post does.
Well, we started with this a Mac version of that back about in 2012, I believe, is when we introduced that, and it's progressed a lot over the last 3 or 4 years, and just recently introduced the Windows version. So the Mac version is good for like, OS X 10.9, 10.10, 10.11. And the Windows version is good for Windows 10, 8, and 7. So we've got the last 3 operating systems covered on both sides. And the whole concept of those is simply, make it real easy to drop your files in, see where it's going, and put it onto the tape and make an offline index. So on your local computer, you have, the information of what's on that tape. And we try to gather what metadata we can from the files that you're putting on the tape and make them searchable, whether you have the tape stuck in the deck or not. So it's a true index versus, like you were saying, with a Finder copy or something, then you have to have the tape in the deck to look at it, whereas this is searching.
So the benefit to PreRoll Post is it's automated. It allows you to work with more files than just a few, and it keeps a record of what it's done so you can figure out what files stored on what tape. Is that a true statement?
Pretty much, yeah.
Then what's the Windows version? Is it the same as Mac? It's just newer?
Well, we didn't have a Windows version earlier because, Mac is pretty pervasive in our industry. Although we found that in Europe, a lot of people have Windows. We saw that from our other applications, so we wanted to address that market. But the Windows version of PreRoll Post is significantly different in that it's more of a single screen interface. So everything is in front of you. You can see on the left-hand column, you can see, your tapes that are mounted, your hard disks that are mounted. You can drag and drop between them, things like that. Versus the Mac version is more of a wizard where it's walking you through, okay, put your files here, drop them here, now get ready to back it up, now do this, do this, do this. So it's a little bit different interface. Might be a little intimidating to start with, but so far people catch on pretty quickly.
But there's lots of different archive utilities. Why would somebody pick PreRoll Post?
Because it's inexpensive and it leverages off of the technology that we've been involved with for the last 10 years or better, as far as knowing how to back things up and to do it quickly and to do it securely and to make sure that copies match originals and all those sorts of things. Also, in LTO land, LTFS land, there's certain characters that you can't use for file names and folder names and things like that. And an application like this keeps you out of trouble and helps you make good backups.
Is it possible to get proxies automatically created of our media so we have a chance to see what they look like without having to waste time downloading them from the tape?
Sure. We do that with our Mac software. We have an application called Proxy Mill that can do that on the fly while you're making your tapes, or you can pre-process them ahead of time and make full-length, low-resolution proxies that would reside on your computer and also on the tape if you want.
One of the things I was struck with LTO is that each LTO generation, 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, will read that generation and 2 generations back. It sounds like we can't just simply copy our archives to a tape and forget about them. We need to actively manage them so that every 5 or 10 years we upgrade them to whatever the current LTO spec is. Is that a true statement?
It's not so much the spec as it is the equipment, whether you still have that equipment that can read it or not. But, look what's happened. LTO 7 is 6 terabytes per tape versus just 2 generations ago, LTO 5 was about 1 terabyte, I think, or 600 meg, something like that. So it's a significant, increase in capacity. So one LTO 7 tape could hold, 10 of your old ones? So I think just like you saw with video over the years, a lot of times, you need a plan to move all those files forward to a newer generation of equipment if you want to continue to be able to access them. I want to point out one thing. Once upon a time, our company's 25 years old now, in January. And we were invited to do the archives for the Olympics in 2002 in Salt Lake. And so we were on site for 30 days. We did the whole thing. And what struck me was one of the managers there that was involved in that said, no two modern Olympics has ever been shot on the same format. So think about that. Every 4 years, it's something different. And that's a big challenge on how do, because they archive all that stuff in Switzerland and put it all, but having an index to it, something they could find, and how do you keep that going forward? That's always a challenge.
That is a challenge. For people that want more information about you and your products, where can they go on the web?
You can go to imagineproducts.com and find all the demos and prices and download things there. If you want to know more about LTO, you can go to lto.org. There's all sorts of resources there to help you understand how the whole thing works and going forward.
And Dan, thanks for joining us today. Dan Montgomery is the co-founder and president of Imagine Products, Inc. And Dan, it's been fun visiting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry.
If you'd like to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To stay connected and receive updates from The Buzz, sign up for our free weekly newsletter now. Or you can learn more about us on our website. And thanks for watching The Digital Production Buzz.